Hello, lovely people. A slightly different type of presentation today, or at least a different subject angle thing. I'm going to go to the Guardian Co UK to start with, and an article entitled "Money Has Been Privatised by Stealth." The greatest privatisation in history has gone unnoticed. It's time to take from the banks the power to produce money. Okay, by Ben Dyson. He starts the article. It's common knowledge that printing your own, it's English, so £10 notes at home is frowned upon by Her Majesty's police. Yet there is a small collection of companies that are authorised to create and spend more new money than the counterfeiters have ever been able to print. In industry jargon, these companies are called monetary and financial institutions, but probably you know them as their street name, banks. Okay? So, the money that they create effectively out of nothing isn't the paper money that bears the logo of the government-owned Bank of England. It's the electronic money that flashes up on the screen when you check your balance at an ATM. Right now, this electronic money makes up over 97% of all the money in the economy. Only 3% of money is still in that old-fashioned form of real cash that can be touched. It's funny, yeah, I was doing the shopping yesterday and the people in front of me paid with cash, and I was going, oh, I haven't seen that for a while. Right, let's go on. Here's how it works. No, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's have a look at Ben Dyson, the writer of the article, and his credentials. So I followed it into the Guardian to check, and this is it. His profile: Ben Dyson is a specialist in money and banking. He has spent 4 years researching and identifying the flaws in the current business model used by banks globally, etc. So he should know his stuff. Here's how it works, he says in the article. When you ask the bank for money to buy a one-bedroom box in London, the money that appears in your account isn't borrowed from some prudent grandmother's life savings. In fact, the bank simply types those numbers into your account, creating brand new money that you can now spend. As other banks do exactly the same, the amount of money in the economy grows and grows. Every new mortgage creates new money, which pushes up house prices just a little more and forces the next buyer to borrow even more from the banks. Brackets here. A more detailed and fully referenced explanation of this process is given in the book Where Does Money Come From?, published by the New Economic Foundation. Through this process of creating money, banks have been able to inflate the money supply at a rate of 11.5% a year, pushing up the prices of houses and pricing out an entire generation. So, he was quoting or referenced NEF, the New Economics Foundation. Follow the link to their website and I can recommend it. I forget how I got to it, but they've got videos in there of a few videos on the run giving Peter Schiff an absolute kicking, which is, to my mind, a very good idea. Why? Because, as we'll get later in this presentation, that is what I'm against if I'm against anything. Having a prism, you know what I mean by prism, having kind of one idea and put everything through it because that is your idea. And he's not just got the prism and it's a little thing and he references it. I mean, it's duct taped to his head, the prism duct taped to his head. And he annoys me immensely because of that. It's not what the prism pumps out, it's just the fact that everything has to be filtered through that prism that's duct taped, gaff taped to his head. Anyway, that's the NEF website, which is good fun. I've had a good stab around it, and I will be going back. They've got some good stuff, good new ideas there, and they've got a new book out and things like that. Anyway, Isabel Kaminska on FT Alphaville picked up on the Dyson article in The Guardian and wrote her own article in FT Alphaville on the demonisation of debt. Congratulations to Ben Dyson, self-professed money and banking specialist, for finally discovering money, or how it works. So, quite a lot to take out of Izzy's article. We just think it's sad that it's taken this long for people to start recognising what's been staring them in the face for so long. More so that upon finally stumbling on this amazing treasure chest of knowledge regarding how central banks work, people somehow think that the most obvious solution is the best one, without considering the fact that some of the greatest minds, who did bother to take an interest when everyone was more busy watching X Factor, have likely already considered, if not dismissed, such concepts. FT Alphaville is a good example of a relatively nerdy yet lay blog trying hard to get to grips with complex developments, systems, and even the basic foundations of the financial system itself. If there's one thing we know, it's that it's not simple. It's tricky. Via our day-to-day operations, we encounter a multitude of varying opinions, views, and theories. We struggle to communicate and make sense of them all. Sometimes we get things right, other times we make mistakes. But most of the time we recognise that the system is complex, and even with our team's collective specialist experience to fall back on, there isn't a day where we don't learn something new when reporting on the current crisis. And this is why I like FT Alphaville, and especially the girls, Isabel Kaminska, Lisa Pollack and Tracy Alloway. The boys are good too, but for some reason I like the girls. Later in the article, it's a long article, and the middle section that I'm not reading is from the Graeber book, the first 5,000 Years of Debt, which is obviously read and enjoyed, and gives us the restatement of the main Graeber position that the money system has not gone barter, money, debt. It's actually gone through history, debt, money, and sometimes barter's used when money has, for some reason, become unusable. But that's another post. But Izzy's read the book. And it seems very little has changed on that front even today. That's referencing Graeber's going back to ancient times and the debt forgiveness and all that sort of stuff. Except that now pawning, and this is where she got to, was pawning in the olden days. Pawning is called repo, the repo market. But whether you call it repo or pawning, what it represents is a return to collateralized lending, something which is happening now on a major scale. And this is the big, of the two things I'd like to push in this article, the major new economic learning for us, I think, is that collateralized lending in the rarefied atmosphere that we don't understand of, the markets, banks lending into each other, central banks and hedge funds and all the very trickiness. Often it was uncollateralized lending. Now they're so nervous and not understanding the value of things that they're demanding collateralized, all loans to be collateralized now. In the past you could get away with, oh yeah, pay you back Thursday. And we would argue it's how the system is fixing itself, by demanding collateral now. Money cannot be extended out of thin air if every new obligation has to be matched by existing collateral. Instead, the current trend towards collateralized lending, just like the one which gripped markets post the Great Depression, ensures that for every working loan there is an equivalent collateral base already in existence. Debt continues, it just becomes collateralized until, once again, we discover how to price it effectively. They're going to safety of collateral until they can work out the real value of things. And yes, this is what we do appreciate, that the real value of things is probably a problem. And the rest of the article goes on, and then the comment section is magnitudes bigger than any other comment section I've ever seen in on an Alphaville blog. And I've spent an hour reading it, and there's still a long way to go. But I'll give you a couple of examples from the comment section just to expand a bit. Paul Andrews says there is a fundamental flaw in Dyson's worldview that this blog does not point out. He says it's common knowledge that printing your own £10 notes at home is frowned upon by Her Majesty's police. Yet there's a small collection of companies that are authorised to create and spend more new money than counterfeiters have ever been able to print. I quoted that at the beginning of the Dyson article. Okay, this is Andrews now. The implication is that a bank is able to create money that then belongs to the bank, that the bank can spend as it pleases. This is not the case. Money, in this case bank deposit, is created when a bank and a private party agree to a loan arrangement. This money in no way represents money owned by the bank. The private party owns the money and owes a debt in return. The bank owns the loan to be repaid and owes the deposit amount to the private party. We've been through this balance sheet system so many times. What the bank does own is the interest stream flowing from the loan minus the interest streams on the deposit. This deposit is generally transferred to other parties either at the same bank or in different banks, e.g. when purchasing a house, the loan goes into the depositor's account and then is paid out to the vendor of the house. Further to this, a bank cannot just create money if it can't convince a private party to take out a loan. Therefore, it is the confluence of the action by the bank with an action by another private party to create the money, not unilateral action by the bank. Now, there have been lots of brilliant comments, and that's not a brilliant comment, but it does help to push the idea that it's not banks, it's banks plus a population that goes into banks and gets loans. And you can say, well, it's the banks that have done clever advertising to get them in to get the loans, but never forget that whole idea of clever advertising to get the people in to get the loans. It's a two-party thing, this bank loan thing, and all this banks, they can't create the money without you and me. They just can't do it. And as the comment says, even when they do, it's not their money. It's your money or somebody else's money. They get the interest from it, which they can make a good working living from, but that's all. Right, Izzy comes in, and I'll finish with this in the end. She replies many times in the comment section, and the comment section, not strangely enough, because it's people struggling to understand money and how the whole system can be improved. Much of the comment section is dedicated to MMT. To reply to as many points as possible, yes, it was definitely a rant, admits Izzy, and it was written immediately after reading aforementioned Guardian piece in that style, since something about it made my skin crawl. Honesty. She just was revolted by the whole article, so just let it rip. But it has been good because we've got all these people talking about the money system. Regarding lack of credentials, as stated, Alphaville is a lay blog, and I myself don't have an economics degree. That is not the problem. As also stated, people taking an interest in these operations are to be commended. Having no credentials has never been the problem. The problem is when people with a lack of credentials resolutely dismiss everyone else's credentials. That's what I don't like. I have no credentials, but I appreciate that other people who do and might therefore have some insight that I don't. Even Alia, that's just to Alia. Alia he's a blogger, gave her an absolute ripping yesterday as well for getting something completely wrong. But she appreciates being told where she's wrong so she can learn. I would prefer to learn from them rather than to dismiss them as idiots. The whole economists didn't see the crisis coming is a moot point. I encountered many economists and analysts who did see it coming. I myself was constantly warning about what was likely to happen as far back as 2006, and I got that view from reading other people's work, especially Duncan's dollar crisis. The problem is that some of those warning voices were marginalised by a certain hysteria that ran across the mainstream. The vast majority of perfectly sane fund managers, advisors and pension managers preferred not to listen to reason. The fault was not so much with the economic analyst profession, but with our own human nature. It's very hard to take criticism, let alone admit that you have invested your money incorrectly. And hopefully that even her comment goes on, and I haven't been able to do it justice by just taking that out. But if I'm doing anything here, I'm trying to get... It's hard when a prism is duct-taped, gaff-taped to your head to rip it off. But that's what I urge everyone to do, because it's the only way to learn. And it's not important that we know things now. If anything's important, it's important that we are learning now. And later, we might be able to give a better balanced view on things, but we will not be able to if we keep the prisms gaff-taped to our heads. Don't be like Peter Schiff and idiots like that. Just start edging the gaff tape off and get rid of those prisms and start learning. I think most of people there on Over the Peak are. That's why they're here. But see if you can get other people to do it as well. It might do some good. Bye.